All right, welcome back, my friends, to a Thanksgiving edition to the daily podcast. And of course, the daily podcast for the Post-Gazette, we talk about all things with respect to the Steelers. And I think that one of the things that is a discussion, at least a discussion this week, is whether or not Arthur Smith is legitimately in a place where people are going to start to come after him for jobs. And there was a job that he was mentioned for this week, and that, of course, is at his alma mater, North Carolina. Now, one of the things that I will say, and I think it's important to note this, is that you can literally be a candidate for a job without actually ever being talked to about the job, without actually having your agent even being talked to about a job. It could be just as much as, somebody reached out, or what I've found over the years when I've, done these job search stories and whatnot, it could be just basically a search firm has your name as a potential candidate, and, they do some background check on you just to make sure that you are going to be able to take the job if it should get to that. So just because a guy's name is mentioned in a job, that doesn't mean that the job has actually been offered to him. It doesn't mean that he's actually a candidate for the job. Doesn't mean that he is actually even interested in the job. When you look at job searches, there's a number of different words that are used. I'm going to let you in a little secret as somebody who's, covered sports for 30 some years. There are some words that are used in job searches that sort of, sometimes stretch the actual definition of those words. The first one is Joe Schmo is a candidate. Candidate can mean anything from he's actually applied for the job, he's talked to somebody for the job, he's reached out and expressed that he's interested in the job. They've reached out or expressed that they might be interested in talking to him. Somebody talked to his agent, or better yet, his agent is looking for him to get a raise or an extension or something from his current job. So he put his name out there among his friendly reporters. Candidate for a job doesn't necessarily mean a guy is actually legitimately a candidate for a job. Again, they stretch it to a point. So when it comes to Arthur Smith and the North Carolina job, I'll be honest with you, I don't think that I don't know that we really know exactly how much he's involved in the North Carolina job. That's number one. Another thing is, well, so-and-so has interest. Either a school has an interest in a candidate or a candidate has interest in a school. So, if a school says, boy, that guy, Arthur Smith, maybe we should look into him. He's this is his alma mater. Technically, that's having interest in him. If a candidate like Arthur Smith says, my alma mater would kind of, if I ever wanted to go back to college, and I don't know if I do, but if my alma mater called, I'd at least talk to them. Well, that's interest. There's no, degrees stated when you say so-and-so has interest in this job or so-and-so has interest in that job, because the reality is interest can mean a lot of different things. So when you hear candidate for or interest in, that generally, is not exactly having enough information to really know where a guy fits into the whole plan and whether or not he's actually interested to the job. Now, Arthur Smith said this week that he's happy to be with the Steelers. He's happy that the Steelers have employed him. His family loves it here, yada, yada, all the right things. Because he's still got 5 or 6 games to coach or whatever it is. 7, what is it? 6, and then you hope that what are they, 8-3? So they have 6 more games, and then you hope that they have a couple of playoff games at least. So maybe 8 more games. Clearly, by saying, yeah, I'm going to be a candidate right now, it's not in his best interests, because if he doesn't get the job at the end of the year, the Steelers could come to him and say, hey, listen, Arthur, you should have taken that job, because you know what? As Mike Tomlin always says, we want volunteers, not hostages. And you feel a lot more like a hostage than a volunteer if you're out there looking for other jobs. during the season when you're supposed to be game planning and getting ready for games, especially important games down the stretch that we need to win. That's really what Arthur Smith was saying this week. I don't know that Arthur Smith is actually going to be a candidate. I have my doubts that he's even going to, talk to North Carolina. I have my doubts that they'd even look into him. But reality is, if it's going to happen, it's not going to happen for, at least another month. And so that's the other thing that North Carolina has to really take into consideration if they're going to look at an NFL coach. They're not going to be able to get out ahead of the hiring process and go get the candidates that they want because, other schools are going to fire coaches and then coaches are going to be candidates for their jobs. And then maybe some of the best names are taken off the board already. That's what is happening here. Arthur Smith is basically a guy that's connected to North Carolina because he's an alum. And a lot of times what happens is guys that cover teams, they have to come up with a list as soon as it's made clear, okay, our guy is getting fired. In this case, Mac Brown is getting fired after this, tomorrow, whenever they play tomorrow. I guess NC State, is that their last game or whatever? It might have even been today. I don't even know. But whenever North Carolina's last game is, either today or tomorrow. Okay, now we're going to need a new coach. Well, if you're the reporter, you have to have information because people like you want information. So you put together a list of all the possible candidates you can come up with that have some connection to North Carolina or might make some sense. For instance, the AD worked somewhere else and his coach is there and maybe his coach would come work for the AD again. In this case, Arthur Smith went to North Carolina. That's basically what we're talking about. I mean, he went to North Carolina, and that seems to be what the connection is here, is that he went to North Carolina. Again, he does have, head coaching experience, obviously in the NFL. I will tell you this. I think that college jobs are a lot harder now than they used to be because of all the other stuff you got to do. And, NIL stuff, you got to worry about transfer stuff. You've got to, recruit your team pretty much every single year. There's a lot that makes a job coaching a school like North Carolina really difficult. I look at what Arthur Smith is making. Most coordinators now are making, $1-2 million a year, something like that. Sure, if he goes to North Carolina, he could make $5-6 million a year. But if he does another year or two with the Steelers, he might have a chance to go get another NFL job and make $10-11 million a year and not have all the headaches of college jobs. That's why I laugh anytime I hear people say, oh, well, the Alabama job is better than the Jets job, for instance. No, it's not. There's not a single college job that's better than a single NFL job because at the end of the day, you're getting paid. You're getting paid regardless if you get fired after a year or not. And you're getting paid a lot. So at the end of the day, you're making your money. As far as the job is, all you're doing is coaching football. You don't have to worry about free agents. You don't have to worry about, the salary cap. You don't have to worry about transfers. You don't have to worry about raising money to pay for your team. You don't have to do any of that. If you're a college coach, especially nowadays, you have to coach football, but you also have to raise money. You have to go to, alumni events and build goodwill. You have to recruit. You have to recruit your own players. You have to worry about the transfer portal. You have to worry about academics. You have to worry about compliance. You have to worry about all these things. Every single day, there's something that you've got to deal with, a headache, because it's different than the NFL. So Arthur Smith, even though he could make more money if he took the North Carolina job, if it was offered to him, by the way, but if he took maybe he could make more money. He would make more money. And he would be able to say he's a head coach again. But long-term, is it the best interest of Arthur Smith? Probably not. Probably not, because I think what would happen here is if Arthur Smith has another year or two where he's got a couple of good years in a row as a coordinator for the Steelers, And he's got his experience as a head coach where he had a little bit of success. Guess what? He's probably going to get another shot to be a head coach somewhere. And so if he does that, that's the difference between making what, $5 or $6 million in North Carolina. He could make $12, $13 million as an NFL coach and not have all the headaches that he would have in college. So short term, yeah, he would make a little bit more money if he took the North Carolina job, but being the offensive coordinator of the Steelers is probably a much better job in terms of profile if he wants to be a head coach in the NFL someday. Again, and I think that that's always what I look at when I hear all these things about, well, this guy's looking at this job and that guy's looking at this job, or it's like, does it make sense? I just don't think it makes sense for Arthur Smith, to be honest. I think that it's one of those things where, writers somewhere, or even maybe, his agent, or, some people in North Carolina that want to, throw people off the scent of who they're really going after. They look at him and they say, well, here's a guy that has a North Carolina diploma. And so therefore he might be in it. He might be interested in the job. So let's throw his name out there because he's a pretty high profile coach. As I always say, if your main qualification is your diploma, where it's from, then you probably aren't really a candidate for that job. It used to drive me crazy whenever Pitt would have an opening in basketball or football. And every single time, the list of guys that would be thrown out there, every single one of them had some tie to Pitt. And it's like, well, if they didn't have that tie to Pitt, would we even be talking about them? And that's what I always say. So I think Arthur Smith, to me at least, I'll be surprised if he's even a candidate of real, a real candidate of even, a place where he even talks to them and has to consider maybe even what he would want or what they would offer him. Because to me, being the offensive coordinator of the Steelers is a much better gig than being the head coach of North Carolina, which, by the way, as a school, if you've ever been there, you would think that school should be much better than it is. Now, on the same subject, when it comes to Arthur Smith, is the idea, has he done a good job with the Steelers? And I think that if you look at what he's done this year, I mean, he's increased, for instance, their points per game about 6 points per game, somewhere in that neighborhood from last year. Now, you could make the argument that, hey, well, yeah, he did, but they've got a better quarterback than they had. And, they've added a little bit on their offensive line. They've got a much better center than they did last year. I mean, you can look at it that way and say, is that explain the 6 points without even going into Arthur Smith? In some respects, maybe. I mean, maybe there's something to be said about that where, it's like, okay, if Matt Canada stayed around and they got Russell Wilson and Justin Fields and they, got Zach Frazier and even, Mason McCormick, he's been a really good player for them. They got those two guys and those four guys and they added it to this offense. Would that have taken them from 16, whatever it was, 15, 16, whatever it was last year, points per game to the 23 that they're averaging now? And my gut tells me probably not. They might have got to like 20, but I don't know that they would have gotten to 23 because I still think Matt Canada was just not a very good coordinator. I think his offense didn't make a lot of sense. I think the way he used players didn't make a lot of sense. I suppose when he had Justin Fields, for those first 5 or 6 games or whatever it was, yeah, maybe in his offense that would have worked even better than it did in Arthur Smith's offense. But let's face it, you basically brought in Arthur Smith and Russell Wilson because the passing game was bad. And Matt Canada is not really a good coordinator when it comes to the passing game. And I think that's where the issue I have comes with it. I look at where they're at right now. They're ranked, let's see, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13. They're ranked, 18th or 19th or something like that in offense. Last year, they were like 28th. So while they're not world beaters, which is what some people would hope that they would be by now, they're better than they were last year. And so in that regard, he's done a reasonably good job. Has he done a great job? Has he been really elite? Has he really taken this thing to the next level? No, I don't think he's done that. Next level would be you're averaging 25, 26 points a game, and you're one of the top 10 offenses in the league. I mean, the top offenses in the league, if you average 25 points a game, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you're in the top 10. And so when you look at points per game, they actually aren't that far off. I mean, they really aren't that far off. And I think that is something you need to keep in mind. They're about 14th or 15th in points per game, which points is the only thing that really, really matters, isn't it? I think that's the thing I would tell you. The other thing that I would look for is their passing numbers, which aren't great at all by any stretch. 192 yards a game. By the same token, how much of that is the philosophy overall of being, a team that wants to run the football? They want to be the team that, really runs the football and does it with a lot of, authority, and they do it a lot, and they're able to shorten games to the run game. Well, if you look at their run game, they're 8th. So I think that really in that regard, if you look at what they're trying to do on offense, I mean, it kind of feels like they're doing a pretty good job. And by extension, Arthur Smith has done a good job. Now, I know there's a lot of people that have been upset with Arthur Smith because, you're a coordinator, you're going to have people that are going to scrutinize everything you do. But to me, Arthur Smith, I think he's done an okay job. Has he been great? Probably not. Has he been good? Yeah, I would say he's been good. And I think if he's good, then to me, you hope that maybe next year, if Russell Wilson comes back, you build on that a little bit. And I think that's the key to me is you build on it next year and you get a little bit better. And hopefully you bring in another receiver in the offseason and you add a little bit more to your offense. Maybe Darnell Washington takes another step. And boy, I think at the end of the day, you have a chance next year to be really good. And so that brings me back to the whole thing with North Carolina. I just don't know if Arthur Smith really has accomplished enough yet with the Steelers that he would leave or that would merit him leaving. And I think that's a reality of it in my mind. I mean, I think really they're averaging 23 points a game, 22.9 to be accurate, 23, 22.9, however you want to, classify it. They're doing what they are supposed to do in terms of scoring, enough points to win some of these games with their defense. I mean, I've said if they can score more than 20 points with their defense, they should win pretty much every game. They've had a couple of games where the defense has sprung a few leaks, obviously, but I just feel like it's one of those situations where I think that they're scoring enough points to win games. Now, the next question is, are they scoring enough points to win in the playoffs? You know what? If you can score 24 points in a playoff game, you've got a good chance to win that playoff game. I don't care who you're playing, even if you're playing the Bills or the Chiefs. And, watching the Chiefs play this year, I'll just tell you, the Chiefs, to me, are a team that if they played the Steelers, it would be the ultimate rock fight. I would still favor the Chiefs because they've got Patrick Mahomes and the Steelers don't. But that's a game to me that I think the Steelers would obviously be in because the Chiefs leave everybody hanging around. And I think that's really what you're looking at when you look at the Chiefs. I don't know they're blowing anybody out. And I don't know that the Steelers would have to score 30 points, to beat Patrick Mahomes in a shootout. I mean, I think really, if you watch the Chiefs this year, they struggle to score in some ways. The Bills and the Ravens, maybe. But again, the Steelers have had the Ravens' number. They've had Lamar Jackson's number. And so, really, the Bills are a team that you say, okay, yeah, I would say if they play the Bills, they better be able to score points. They might have to because the Bills' offense can be really potent. Same thing with the Bengals. I mean, they play the Bengals this week. I would say the same thing. The problem is the Bengals aren't going to be in the playoffs, so it doesn't matter. This week the Steelers are going to have to score points. They will have to score some points because Joe Burrow and those receivers are probably going to put up 20-plus points. It's just the way it is. It's the nature of the beast. And so I think that when you look at what Arthur Smith has done, you say to yourself, do they have a better chance this year of winning those kind of games than they did last year? And the answer is absolutely they do. I mean, last year, if a game got into the 20s, they were going to have a hard time winning it just because their offense was not really built for that. It was not really built to score a lot of points. It was not really built for quick strikes and, big plays and throws down the field. It just wasn't. They didn't have the quarterback for that until they, the last couple of games of the year, they put Mason Rudolph in. All of a sudden, they could throw the ball down the field a little bit. But at the end of the day, I mean, he's still Mason Rudolph. Not a bad quarterback. Not really, not a bad backup quarterback to have around, but he's obviously not a guy you want as your starter. And so I'm just saying, if you're going to grade Arthur Smith this year, if your grade is lower than like a C+, then you're probably being too hard. I would give him a B, a solid B, because I think that he's made it better. I think he's made it better. He's given them an opportunity to win games if the score gets into the 20s and even low 30s. He's, done a pretty good job of tailoring what they're trying to do to what Russell Wilson does well. And they're running the football pretty well. I mean, say whatever you want. You say they're 8th in the NFL in running the football, in rushing yards and all that other good stuff that you measure it with. I mean, right now, rushing yards per game, they are averaging 135 per game. So they're getting some efficiency from their running game. They're able to, in turn, shorten the games a little bit, but they don't, it's not like last year where they had no margin for error at all. Last year, they had no margin for error. Last year, they, basically needed everything to go right. And if it didn't go right, then they probably were going to lose the game because they couldn't afford to fall too far behind in these games. As we've seen several times this year, they can fall behind a little bit and they still are able to come back and win. They can, turn the ball over once or twice and still afford, and still be able to come back to win. And so it's just going to be interesting to me when I see all this stuff that you have to really basically, take the big picture, all of it, and say, okay, how does all this fit together? And the way it fits together to me is, on the whole, Arthur Smith has done a pretty good job. Now, let's say the last 6 games, what is this offense capable of doing? Well, if you look at the defenses they play the Browns again. They play twice against the Bengals, who have a terrible defense. They play the Eagles, who give up some points. They play the Ravens, who, until they played the Steelers, was a team that gave up a lot of points. And so all of that added up together, I think that really they are going to basically be in a situation where they probably are going to have an opportunity to score some points. And I think with the offense that they have, the receivers they have, the tight ends that they have, the fact that they're running the ball a little better, their offensive line's coming together, it's not unreasonable to suggest over these next 6 games they could average 26 points a game going into the playoffs. It's not unreasonable. That's 3 points more a game. You look at all of these games, if they're a little better in the red zone, that's where 3 points come from. And I think that's going to be the most important thing for this team, is finishing in the red zone. But with Pickens and with Russell Wilson and, whatever they're going to do with Justin Fields a little bit here and there, with the 2 tight ends they have, with the running backs they have, as the offensive line gets better and, just kind of gets a little bit more healthy in terms of, their chemistry, they gel, all that good stuff. Yeah, I do believe, honestly, I do believe that the Steelers could average 26 points a game down the stretch. And that's where I would tell you, you can expect that. And I don't think that's unrealistic. Now, looking ahead to Sunday, they're going to play a bad defense. The Bengals are a bad defense, period. No other way to say it. They are a bad defense. And so if you're the Steelers, you need to take advantage of this. If you're Russell Wilson, you should be licking your chops. They should be able to throw the ball down the field, and they should be able to do, whatever almost they want to on offense against that defense, because that's what that defense has done. And I think you're going to have to, because I think their offense is going to score some points as well. That's just where I'm at with it. I think it's really important that, they score points. Joe Burrow and T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, I think all of them together, those three, may be the toughest matchup for a passing defense in the NFL. Just those three. Two great receivers and a quarterback that's, among the best in the league. And as I pointed out the other day, because there seems to be this idea that Joe Burrow's not having a great season because the Bengals aren't winning. Well, number one, the Bengals are number one in passing offense in the NFL. Number two, if you look at Burrow's numbers, okay, these are the numbers of an elite quarterback. He is 274 of 408, 67% completion percentage, 3,028 yards, 27 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. 27 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. The Bengals are losing, but it ain't Joe Burrow's fault. It just ain't. I mean, if you look at it from that standpoint, it's not his fault at all. He's done his job. He's been that guy that we think he is. And really, if you think about it, touchdown passes right now, he has 27. Lamar Jackson has 27. Nobody else has more than 25. So Burrow is good. Burrow has done his job this year. He's played really, really well. And I think that's the key. And I feel like, when you are going to talk about this game coming up, that's what you have to focus on. The Steelers' defense against Joe Burrow. Because I think the Steelers' offense is going to play well. I think they're going to score points. I think that they'll be able to move the ball against that defense. It's not very good. The question is, can they stop Burrow in that offense? And that is what, we'll have to watch on Sunday. Someone brings up a good point about Mike Williams. And I think one of the things about Mike Williams, he could add something. But the fact that they're not using him in other than just to run a few go routes every so often tells me that they don't think he's got much left in the tank to run other stuff. That's what it tells me. That they've seen him in practice and they don't think he has much use running the underneath routes and, on 3rd down and 5 running, a 6-yard route or whatever. They don't think that that's what he's really going to be able to help them. He's going to be able to help them running his go routes down the field and either take away defense from Pickens or, he gets singled up and you throw it like the first game that he played where he caught a touchdown pass, the deep pass. But the thing about it is there's not that many opportunities throughout a game to use that. That's the issue. So if you put him out there because there's 10 opportunities in a game, right, that you might be able to use a go route, he might only be open twice. And, maybe you get sacked once. Next thing you know, there's only one throw that you really are going to make to him. That's what really the reality is when you have a guy like him that you sign. By the way, game's always on at Archie's on Carson Street. Get down to Archie's on Carson Street in Station Square. It is 80-cent wings Monday through Thursday. All the games on Sunday, by the way. You can go there tomorrow on Saturday. You can watch college football all day. Penguin games all week long. Get the Archies. And, of course, when you get there, say that I sent you. And, of course, the other thing is try my grilled cheese sandwich. It's on the menu. And then maybe some Monday night we'll see you down there. It is going to be interesting to see how this all plays out on Sunday. But I think further down the road, is taking a look at, what's going to happen, what's going to happen down the road if the Steelers don't get a little better on offense. And the answer is, I don't know that they're going to play a ton of great offenses down the stretch. And and even in the playoffs. So as long as they continue to get better as they can, and they continue to build on what they've done, I think they're going to be fine. Real quickly, one of the other things that I wanted to say is tomorrow is a really big game for Pitt. They play Boston College, which doesn't sound like it's a big game, but when you've lost 4 in a row, you were 7-0 and you're 7-4, you can't lose to Boston College. You can't. I'm not saying it puts Pat Narduzzi on the hot seat, but what I do think happens is you start to wonder, okay, is his seat as secure as it appeared to be, or it appears to be? And I just don't know that you can, if you lose 5 in a row to end the season, if that's going to be the case. So that's a game to watch this weekend. It's a really important game, I think, for Pitt and for Pat Narduzzi. That's it for me. Happy holidays. And of course, we'll do it again on Monday. And on Monday, we will obviously be breaking down the Steelers versus the Bengals. And we'll do it like we always do, hopefully talking about a win.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.